Here's a model answer to a question from June 2011 that carried 9 marks. It will be a 13-minute question, therefore, 13 to 14 minutes. And the question is, describe the role of the SS in the years 1933 to 45. Fairly straightforward question, but the Chief Examiner's report does point out that many students achieved quite badly on this question because they had a very sort of simplistic understanding of what the SS was. I think a key point to mention here is it does say the years 1933 to 45, so you're expected to cover a 12-year period, and so therefore you need to understand, show that you understand that the role actually changed, that the SS expanded, they took up on new areas. Anyway, here's a plan. If you were to learn this plan by heart, you'd be absolutely watertight on this question should it appear this year. Just remind you, as usual, of the basics. You've got 13 minutes. It's crucial that you just write a single sentence introduction at the beginning. We'll look at that in a second. And the most crucial bit is your topic sentences. I'm just drawing a line around those. And you then allow yourself time to conclude. Broadly speaking, the introduction and conclusion are just single sentences, a couple of minutes max. 1 minute on the introduction, 1 minute on the conclusion would be fine. That would leave you about 2 minutes per paragraph, 2 to 3 minutes per paragraph. So the important thing is you get those topic sentences down, and then depending on how fast you can write, you expand with the information to the right, and put in as much of that information as you can, but the key thing is sticking to your timing. A couple of minutes on each paragraph and you cover all of those points. That's the key. Right, so let's zoom in and go through what the key points are that you would need to make. So your introduction, point out that the SS were originally Hitler's bodyguard, but their role expanded enormously to take control of policing and eventually the extermination of the Jews. Single sentence, just mention that. I think the key thing is their role expanded. Okay, it was not static, it was not fixed. They started off fairly small. By 1945 they were enormous. I think originally Hitler's bodyguard there was only about 200 of them. I think by 1945 there was something like 700,000, something like that, members of the SS. So they expanded enormously during this period. Okay, so your first proper paragraph then. I think a great word to use is, and I'll underline it for you there, is they were an elite. Elite means the cream of the cream. They were, to become a member of the SS, you had to prove your Aryan ancestry going back 200 years. They symbolised Nazi racial ideology. So therefore you had to be a pure Aryan. That's what they were about. They captured within themselves what Hitler's racial ideas were. They were not secret. That's an important thing to mention. Okay, I think sometimes people think SS. They think secret. That's not true. There was nothing secret about the SS. They were very, very visible. They wore black uniforms. Okay, so be very careful to distinguish them from the SA, who wore brown uniforms. So the SS, Hitler's bodyguard, wore black uniforms. Their leader was Heinrich Himmler. Himmler's deputy leader was a man called Heydrich. New recruits were trained in special schools called Orders of the Castle, and they were trained to be absolutely ruthless and self-disciplined. So that first brief paragraph just get across the fact they were originally a very small group of bodyguards to Hitler. Now you then move into, as you move into paragraph 3, how they began to expand. Now the first occasion when they really emerged and they expanded was the Night of the Long Knives, which was on the 30th of June 1934. Originally, the SS were part of the SA. So Ernst Röhm was actually Himmler's boss. But what happened on the night of the Long Knives is the SS were the executioners who killed the SA leaders. And in return for that, the SS were given independence. They were made completely independent from the SA, and at that point onward they were Hitler's personal instrument, and they owed obedience to Hitler alone. Then write a brief paragraph about how the SS took over Germany's policing, the courts and the justice system. So Himmler was made chief of the German police, and the most significant change that Germans noticed was a whole network of new prisons called concentration camps that were created. At first they were used mainly for political prisoners, communists, social democrats, trade unions, but increasingly anybody who was seen to be dragging their feet, not contributing to making Germany strong again, we call them asocial types, work-shy, alcoholics, etc., were put into concentration camps. The most famous concentration camp was Dachau, and they were, of course, very, very brutal places with summary executions. People were often just executed on the spot without trial in concentration camps. Be very careful to show the examiner you understand that concentration camps were not for Jews in the early stages. Okay, Jews were not put into concentration camps for being Jewish until about 1938, after Kristallnacht. You then move into the next paragraph, paragraph 5. Again, just a brief paragraph. Talk about the secret surveillance aspect of the SS. Now remember, the SS were highly visible, they wore black shirts, but they had a sub-organisation within it called the Gestapo, and they were the secret police, and they were led by a man called Heinrich Müller. How did they operate? Well, they had a vast network of block wardens scattered throughout the whole of Germany, hundreds of thousands of block wardens who were on every street, who listened out for grumblers and people who did not show a positive attitude. And people were encouraged to denounce, we call them denunciations, people to the block warden, who would then report those people to the Gestapo. And usually the Gestapo didn't have to send them to prison or anything. Usually that they would just find they were given a warning, maybe a promotion at work was blocked. But if it continued, they would go to concentration camps. Asocial behaviour was considered to be a political crime. And then finally, paragraph 6, move into the role which they are most famous for. That really developed from 1938 onwards, starting with Kristallnacht. And this was the role of racial purification. After all, to be a member of the SS, you had to have pure blood. So increasingly, following Kristallnacht, Jews for the first time were put into concentration camps. SS were put in charge of emigration. Remember, at that stage, the final solution was forcing Jews to emigrate. But once war broke out in 1939, emigration was no longer a solution. And as you have been taught, they eventually decided on a new final solution at the Wannsee Conference. And the new final solution was the genocide, it was the Holocaust. And the SS were put in charge of that. Himmler was given the job to Germanise the occupied East. New concentration camps were built at Auschwitz and Treblinka, but these were special concentration camps equipped with gassing facilities, and so they were known as death camps. And the SS manned those death camps and led the final solution. The SS soldiers in the death camps were called Death's Head soldiers, so that's a useful detail to include in your answer. So you then move to paragraph 7, the final paragraph, sum up those key points, that they were the Nazi elite, Hitler's personal instrument, and that they steadily grew in power. Get across that fact that it changed over time. They were greatly feared, and ultimately they ran the death camps in World War II. That's a 13-minute answer. That will give you plenty of material to write if that comes up this summer. One final point, forgot to mention, on the next page, the third page, I've taken an answer from the Chief Examiner's report that actually got top marks. It got 13 out of 13 in the year this question was set. So useful just again to see the standard expected to get the top mark for that. The document that you're looking at here is of course available in the model answers folder in Frog.